promise you that I'm not going to read the whole thing, only part of it. First of all, we'll go through a couple of the academic things. There were 3 kings. Tell me what their names are. Casper, Melchior, Balthazar. How many of you named your children that? Do you look like a Melchior right there? Is that your name, Melchior? What is your name? Well, it's close. That's a good name. All right, so we have the 3 kings, and they bought 3 gifts: gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Gold means king. You're close. You're in the neighborhood. You were coming into third base. All right, gold, frankincense. And this is one our pastor loves. Yeah, he would have a big puff of incense going up. In fact, he would hold on to it right to the ceiling. So the incense has to do with godlike, all right? And then the myrrh, what's that about? Pardon? Yes. Correct. It's for anybody who's embalming and done that sort of thing. It was for that purpose, for preparing the body. The meaning is this. This is a review. You know all this, but the review here is important because Easter is going to come real quickly this year. All right, because the 14th of February is already the first day of Lent. Ash Wednesday, Valentine's Day. Can you imagine that? Whoopee. I can hardly wait till Valentine's Day. Now, the issue here is that you have this person who came into the world who is both God and man. And that is important for us because in the early church there were points in time when they began to question that. Some say, no, he's totally God. The human thing is just a mirage. And others held to it, no. He's fully God, fully human. Okay, are we clear about that? All right. And I just would encourage you, any of you who are younger here, do not name your children Melchior, Balthazar, and so on, okay? Come to me, I'll help you with some other names. Now, this reading that I have here, listen to what it says. Brothers and sisters, you have heard of the stewardship of God's grace that was given to me for your benefit. Now, let's talk about St. Paul just for a minute. St. Paul has been chosen as one of the apostles, correct? Say yes, Father. Are you Catholic here in this group? Or shall I go to another? All right, this is important. This is important, is that Paul is an apostle. Now, how do you suppose Paul becomes an apostle when he spent no time with Jesus and there was no such thing as a seminary? You realize that? There's no seminary then. Nor did he spend any time with Jesus. So how did it happen? He, in this reading, it came to me in revelation. That's how he received it. Because Paul writes a lot of stuff. We used to say in the seminary, if Jesus didn't say it, then Paul did. Okay, and if you look through the Old Testament, that's the way it is. So it's important that you understand where Paul is in this process. So are we clear about that? So by revelation, he is instructed so that he is on the mark. And he's the one who tells us that the Gentiles are co-heirs with the Jewish people for the Messiah who has come. Another way to say that is that when Jesus came into this world, he came in for everybody. Now, what I need to tell you here and what you need to grab a hold of is the Jews did not accept that as good news. And why? They were this small group that I told you about who were beat up upon for millennia. And they thought that when Jesus came, and this is really significant, when he came, he would be a civil ruler. Do you understand the difference here? That Jesus would be a civil ruler, and he would go out there and break some real legs and push some people around so that they're not going to be beat up on anymore. When Jesus came, what did he do? He went to the sick, the suffering, the dying, the poor, and healed them. And then later on in his sermons to the people, he says to them, love your enemies. Oh boy, that did not go over well at all. People walked away. This is really important for us to understand. Now, wouldn't you say that if the church started in Jerusalem, that Jerusalem should probably become the head and the capital of the church, wouldn't you say? Where did it end up? And it ended up in Rome for a couple of reasons. One is because there were a lot of Jewish people in Rome, because they were taken there by the Romans, all of those persons who were experts, and used in their markets and other places, used as slaves. So they were taking the best, taking it to Rome. But the big issue here is that the Jewish people did not recognize Jesus as Messiah. This is real important. So, two issues to focus on here. One is when the Jewish people expected this Messiah, they expected a civil ruler, and instead they received a minister of the heart who's going to tell us that the central message of his whole ministry is to love God above all and our neighbor as ourselves. That did not go over well. The second point is that this Jesus was to be shared with everybody. A way to say that is that Christmas is the feast of the Jews. This feast we celebrate today, Epiphany, making manifest this Jesus, is for us who are Gentiles. You understand what we're saying here? So this is our feast day, telling us specifically that when Jesus came, he came from everybody. He came for everybody. Do we have that clear? All right. And you might ask this question then as I close. Why did the Lord go through so much stuff to prepare us for the coming of this Messiah? From our point of view, it couldn't be clearer who this Jesus is. How is it that they were able to reject this Jesus? And dearest family, that is one of the mysteries that we have to deal with as Christian Catholics, that they did not get the message. But that as we receive the message, we know that it is there for everyone who wishes to believe. Anyone who comes after me, does the commandments, is a son or daughter of mine. And so he calls all of us to this way of life. So, dearest family, This is not a time to blame them for anything, but to leave it as a mystery that he came into this world, but they did not recognize him. But we do recognize in them through the gift of our faith. And through that, we have this wonderful celebration today where the whole Word of God is open to us and given to us as gift. And the other really crucial issue here is that it was a very human process. The last thing I want to live to you is that the Jewish people are not that different from you and I. We look the same by and large. But it's this human process. So when God entered into the world, he wasn't just going to place Jesus there just out of nowhere. He came through a group of people into our lives. And it is that same process that goes on from century to century to open ourselves for him to come into our lives, to grow deeper. And in our Christian Catholic faith, to grow deeper means that every day I'm more and more aware of the presence of God. And that the presence of God means a presence of love. When we have that, we're able to, as we look forward, we're able to live our life more fully, more completely, and with the famous phrase that comes from the story of the Nativity, where the angel says, "Do not be afraid." And those words are important for us given the world in which we live now and all the things that have changed and come about and what we're struggling with. He says to us, each personally, do not be afraid. Lastly, the spiritual forefathers and mothers of our life. You notice if you look at their life, that one of the things that you will see is their life was very, very simple. Do you ever go down to the Capuchins and look at Father Solanus' place there? You can barely find the stuff in the room, so little. What they understood and what they're passing on to us and what Paul is passing on to us is this. The more I get the clutter out of my life, the more I'm able to receive the presence of God, which makes my life fuller and more complete. That's the goal of all that I talked about today. That presence is what takes on our life. And when that presence is there, it begins to move out the clutter, and it especially moves out fear, so that we can boldly go forward, choosing to do one loving act after another.